Yeah. 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 Check the mic, 1, 2, this ain't no drill, this is the truth. From Roxas to streets, hear the veterans' youth and the wisdom of ages. Battle hardened and true, combat news on the air, breaking through for me and you. We're boots on the ground, voices strong and clear, cutting through the static, conquering every fear. Monroe County to NYS, our message rings out wide for every...
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Conversations with Sarge, powered by and brought to you by Combat News, where we put veteran policy in perspective. And today we have another special guest, a fellow veteran, Lt.Col Kerry Dunham. He is here from our area in Monroe County, and he was nice enough to join us for Conversations with Sarge. And so thank you and welcome, Kerry.
I'm very honored to be here.
Thank you so much. And we're honored to have you for sure. And if you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit, before we get into the military side of it, but who you are, where you're from originally?
Well, I was actually born in Chula Vista, California. My family moved out to a little place called Gearing, Nebraska. I graduated from high school from Gearing, Nebraska. Attended the University of Wyoming and joined the military.
Awesome. And now, when you decided to join the military, when that all was happening, was there a specific moment, a family tradition, or maybe like a movie or book that made you say, like, man, I'm going to go enlist? Or what made you want to do that?
I think the experience was I graduated from the University of Wyoming, and then I came home to Gearing, Nebraska, and still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I didn't know this at the time, but my father, who's a Navy vet, he served during the Korean War, called up the recruiters in my local area and said, "Hey, my son's graduated from college. He's a little lost. Can you reach out to him?" And so my dad called all the recruiters, and I actually got calls from him. I'm like, why are they calling me? But I went and talked to him, and ended up, and I had a good experience at the University of Wyoming. I had some friends that went to ROTC, and they were good people.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what, maybe the Air Force enlisted would be okay, and now I've tried to come in and earn a commission and become an officer. And so I signed up, joined the Air Force, went to basic training, became a law enforcement specialist, and was stationed at F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming for 2 years. Applied to officers training school, was selected, went off to OTS, and started a different journey.
I love it. That is awesome because, I've known you for some time now, and I'm glad that I finally get to, hear a little bit more about your story. So I was looking forward to this just as much as I know other people were as well. And if you could remember back to that time, do you remember what the last conversation with your family or friends you had before, you decided to take that leap? Was it positive? Was it on the fence? Like, what are you doing?
No, my dad, being the Navy vet he was, knew it would do me some good, and he thought it was a good place for me to be. So they were very encouraging, and for that I'll always be grateful. Because in hindsight, I don't know what I would have done had I not been part of the military family, because they give you such a sense of purpose and a sense of honor, and teach you teamwork and mission accomplishment, execution, and the things you really need to learn to be successful in this life. And I was really grateful I had that opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. I tell people the same thing. I said, I don't know where I would be if I didn't join the military. The military really saved me, gave me direction, and gave me a purpose, and even afterwards now continues giving me a purpose. Now, when you joined the military, did you know a lot about it before you joined? Did you know what to expect because your father, was his prior service? Or were you still not sure what to expect?
I had no idea what to expect. I interviewed with like the Army, and I interviewed with the Air Force and the Navy. And the Navy guy was pretty honest with me. He said, "You know what? Not everybody's on this ship, but I've been in the military for 21 years, and 19 of it was on a ship." And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I don't think that's for me. And I ended up joining the Air Force because, in a large part, because I like blue. It's a pretty color, um, and kind of move forward from there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So how quickly did reality, you think, set in? How far into the process did you realize, okay, this now it's now I have to go over the hurdle, you know what I mean, and continue on my journey.
You know,
The
I
no
was.
turning back moment.
I think when you're in, I couldn't see. I was going to just do the best I possibly could, and in part because my goal was to become an officer, so you had to shine, and so my goal was to shine real hard and do my job and get it done right. That was pretty much why it kept me motivated, got me through basic, got me through tech school, and got me noticed I was part of the 90th Security Police Squadron at FE Warren, and it got me noticed, and it got me put in positions to be recognized. And I kept working very hard and got involved in the community things. At that point, I was one of the instructors with the base karate team. I'm actually a black belt in Taekwondo. I was busy with the
Wow.
with youth alternatives out of Cheyenne, Wyoming, which helped kids diverted from the criminal justice system to find a home. And I was kind of like a foster, kind of a mentor, kind of like what we do at Compeers, but I was kind of doing that there. And then I started grad school. Oh, and I was like, and I was kind of getting ready to do something, and I got selected, which was a grace of God moment. And then sent to officers training school, and then move forward from there.
Now, with your job in the military that you were talking about, can you explain your primary job in, civilian terms so, the listeners can understand, what that means, what you did, or what your job was, what you were supposed to do? Because we all know that even though we had a job, we did a lot of other things. But what was supposed to be your main job and your main mission when you were in uniform?
I've done kind of a variety of things, and I'm one of the few folks that had mostly civilian or type of careers. When I got commissioned, I ended up as a substance abuse control officer or a drug alcohol abuse control officer at Langley Air Force Base. So I oversaw in-house alcohol rehab programs, drug testing. That was my first job as an officer at the first TAC fighter wing. So I guess it would now be the first combat fighter wing, but be that as it may. And then from there, I went to Italy to be the director of both substance abuse control programs and equal opportunity or diversity programs at San Vito Air Station. And then we won, then the world changed. The Berlin Wall came down, and they started downsizing. And so I chose at that time to go ahead and downsize myself, and left in 92 and became an Air Force reservist in 1993. And they hired me
Oh, okay.
to be the substance abuse control officer, which means, again, I'm working with
Wow.
alcohol programs under regulation. And then I became an equal opportunity officer again, which I've done. And then I went on active duty to be an Air Force ROTC instructor at RIT, spent 3 years there as a unit admissions officer, and taught the leadership program while I was there. When that
Wow.
assignment ended, I went back to the 914th Airlift Wing, and they made me the EO director. So I oversaw, again, diversity and equal opportunity programs for the wing. And then I got pulled out, and then the Air Force Reserve Command called up and asked me to go to Afghanistan in 2013. I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? Well, we want you to be the EO program manager for Eastern Afghanistan and the sexual assault response coordinator for Eastern Afghanistan.
Wow.
And that was a huge footprint at that time. So I ended up
Yes.
going through combat arms training, from the Air Force side, deployed to Bagram, Afghanistan. Ended up being trained in the Army way of sexual assault and harassment programs, so I could oversee them in theater. And then, so that's what I
Okay.
did. So everything I've done has
That's
been sort of civilian oriented, and the Army in particular needed leadership, senior leadership in a position where they could trust them, and they had a kind heart. And I was very blessed and privileged
yeah.
to get that assignment. I spent about 8 months in Afghanistan, came home, um, and then in 13 and in 2014, I hit my high year of tenure with the Air Force, and basically, so I was done. And in 2014, I got hired to work at the United States Military Academy at West Point, um,
Wow.
working in the same programs I had worked for in the Army in Afghanistan. And so I spent the next 5.5
Wow.
years at West Point, uh, learning, growing, and caring for people who had been hurt.
That's awesome. Well, that makes a lot of sense to what we're going to talk about towards the end of this podcast. Why people, I believe, and you're very humble, and me, I'm in the community very, very deep, and even though we personally, don't see each other often, as much as I'd like to see you, and that's more of my, I got to get out there and doing this stuff. But either way, I hear so many good things about you from so many different parts of the community, whether it's from people that have gone through the Richards House or people with Compeer or vets driving, but like your name has come up as like the uncle, the old soul. You know what I mean? The people that I've heard people tell me, Kerry, that when they get around you, that they feel like things just drop. And the stories that I heard, I'm just like, Kerry, it is impressive. Whether you know it or not, just you walking into a room is making veterans feel comfortable, feel at home, feel accepted, and feel that if they do have something, that they know that they could come to you. You know what I mean? And you wouldn't judge them. You've gone through it. You're not a by the book person. You know what I mean? You care. You really do care. And I was I knew about you, but hearing it from people who are like, man, this is the Kerry I know. It was pretty awesome, and you telling your story it makes perfect sense to me now, why they feel that way. And now, while you were in there going through all that, because it definitely is a emotional, feel good, but you also have to, accountability, rules and regs. Is there a person when you were in the military that changed that you served with, that changed the trajectory of your life, whether even if it has to do with brotherhood, sisterhood, or just something that happened that when you served it changed the trajectory of your life, where you feel that was like a aha moment? And does that am I making sense at all? Because I could try to rephrase the question. It goes to like the brotherhood, sisterhood, and the bonds formed in the military. Is there a person or is there a time that you can remember when you served that changed the trajectory, whether it's a person or a thing?
I guess it's a number of things. There was a Captain Earl Coker who was very important in me being selected for officers training school, because he was the exec for the wing commander at the time, and he was very important to that part of the process. I can honestly say that a guy named Chaplain Al McGowan, who was an Air Force chaplain, was an important part of my early years as an officer, and he sort of helped me through some tough times, and that's probably why I'm so kind-hearted towards chaplains, because I've said for many years that the reason I'm alive and well today is because of an Air Force chaplain, and for that I'll always be grateful. Um, I think there's been some good people in my life that have been mentors and people that just helped me. But most of the time, people recognize that when I work with them or for them, just get out of my way and let me have it. I grew up in the Air Force side of the community, so What that means is, with leadership is we manage by exception, which means my boss doesn't know everything I do, but when there's an issue that comes up that the boss needs to know, they do. The rest of it I handle on my own because that's how we're trained to do things. And anytime
Yes.
you go to your boss and say, I need guidance, the boss will look at you and goes, Kerry, I think I need a different officer to work for me because that's not your role. You're here to help me lead and help me manage this wing and help me, when we get to the Army side, help commanders do a better job caring for their soldiers. And I think I actually have kind of an AA background, and it's pretty simple. Leadership in AA is pretty simple. I'm a trusted servant. That's all I am. And I lead by example.
Amen. Amen. I like that.
So
I like that a lot. That is awesome. Now when you're going and you're thinking back, to the military side of things, and as we transition, to you when you're getting out, looking back, what would you say was your best day or best times in uniform? And conversely, what was your toughest lesson you had to learn when you were in the military?
I think the happiest I've ever been was when I was working as an ROTC instructor at RIT. And I was going to grad school too, because I was blessed or tasked with the leadership program. I wanted to do a really good job, so I also signed up for a graduate program that focused on leadership, organization, and change management, so that I was able to take the ROTC work and wrap it in some very high level leadership studies in order to provide a better product to these young folks. Because the challenge is, when I look back at what I learned in officers training school, it wasn't really enough to get me through. And so I took those experiences and I took the write-ups and the readings from the ROTC programs, added them to PhD level work in organizations and leadership and change management in particular, and integrated it into the course material. And I look back at it now, and there's a number of those folks that retired as 05s and 06s that are now still serving in the military.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
but
That's it. Yeah. So beyond, like, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say the thing that really changed me was when I left the wing, because I was basically high year of tenure, which meant I was done, and I got hired at West Point, and I got to work with some Army officers that were freaking out. I was now a civil servant, but the reality is I will always be a retired lieutenant colonel. So I would often work with
Yes.
young captains or young majors, and while my job was very different, the fact that I walked in there with an experience base of, listen, Captain, I get you, but let me help you move forward because I want you to get where I am. So let me share.
Yes.
And I found myself with leadership at the academy, and it took me a long time because I started off in some very odd positions and doing some very odd things. But I found myself towards the end working with the new TAC officers and the TAC NCOs, which are the people who actually train cadets, sharing with them lessons learned from this experience. And it was so very hard because I was a geographically separated husband, which meant my wife lived in Fairport, New York, and I was at the academy on call. So I didn't get to come
Ooh.
home very much, but I found myself
Yeah.
completely embedded in the community just out of survival. So I was doing things at the academy, one, to keep engaged, like Leadership Challenge. Like I was involved in the honor mentoring program with the cadets that had ran into challenges. I helped set up some programs. For example, I worked very closely with the chaplains to set up a survivor support group through the chaplain's office for
Oh,
survivors
wow.
of sexual assault. I worked very closely with the substance abuse control officers out there to set up an in-house AA type program for the cadets while I was there. And because I'd done just about everything, I was able to sort of get folks to consider something that was very different to the basic approach of the academy. And I got to work with some very smart people. I'll never forget. Now Dr. Samantha Ross was incredibly good. She's a very knowledgeable person to work with. I got to be on a very positive relationships with the commanding general of West Point, the superintendent, Darrell
Wow.
Williams. And I found myself in a sort of a situation of leading by example and having to explain to folks how things really work and providing context to the world. And it was such a blessing. But what brought me home was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I got depressed towards the end and came home because I read a book once, probably more like 3 or 4 times, by a guy named Matt Atkinson called Resurrection from Rape or After Rape. And it's a very hard book to
Wow.
read. But one of the things he would say is, to paraphrase, that if a survivor doesn't see pain in your eyes, they won't trust you with their lives. And so that became very real to me, because if I'm working with folks who'd been hurt, they needed to see a little pain, which meant I had to be a little closer and a little more vulnerable. And when that happens, it's very hard to do. And
Yes.
we were able to do some very good things with some people. And I got to work with the leadership of a much higher level, everything from 06s to 1 stars to 3 stars while I was there. And it was such a privilege,
Wow.
but it was also such a burden too.
Yeah, chaplains are important.
Amen.
I believe. I mean, they really have come a long way. From when I joined the military, I always heard bad things about the chaplains. Oh, they're just filling jobs. Oh, they're this, they're that. But I was brought up. My mom went to church all the time. We do believe in God in our family. I grew up in the church and Sunday school and all that. But as we grow up, and as every kid, I imagine, has that, I call it backsliding. You know what I mean? It's a notorious term, backsliding. You move away, and it wasn't until I got back after my second deployment where I, after being injured, going through the surgeries that I had, where I was like, Sarge, this is not your life. Yes, it's your life, but you have no control over this. You know what I mean? Your story, your destiny is there. It's in God's hands. Whether you believe in God or not, it's in the higher power's hands. You know what I mean? And once I started getting to talking back with the chaplain, I realized, I said, man, they're one of the most, I don't even know if there's words that I can put it. We need them. You know what I mean? We need them. And I believe that we need to push that more in the military while these men and women are in uniform, and I'm not saying push religion, anything. I'm just saying push the chaplain is here for you. Push having monthly get-togethers with the chaplain, because I was always wanting to stay away from him. And if I would have just felt the way that I felt after I talked to him when I needed him the most, I think it would have been a lot different story, a lot different for me. I wouldn't have been in so much pain. I wouldn't have had so many thoughts. So it's good to hear, you as well saying, the great things about chaplains, because I think sometimes people are afraid. And I encourage all of my fellow men and women in uniform that are still serving right now, reach out to your chaplain. You know what I mean? Go find out who they are if you don't know who they are. Have a sit down with them. They will sit down with you. And then encourage your fellow, battle buddies to do the same too, because your chaplain can really make your life and your weeks and your months and your years a lot brighter, I believe. You know what I mean? It's a little bit more than a battle buddy system, I believe, when you really truly trust in the chaplain, and the chaplain obviously is going to trust in you, that you're not trying to bamboozle them. But yeah, it's just so interesting. I actually have a book. I don't know if you or anybody else, this book right here, and I didn't read the whole thing yet, but I'll show. It's called God Answers Prayers, Military Edition, True Stories from People Who Served and Those Who Love Them, by Allison, I'm not sure the last name, Botek, but I'll show you a picture of it. But this book right here is something I encourage people to check out, because it talks about, men and women during the hardest times in their life, and when they just said, hey, I'm turning to God, you know what I mean? And some of the stories, they were like, I didn't even know what I was doing. I just did what I was told because I had nothing else. I had nothing to lose, type of thing. It'll definitely empower you and empower other people reading it. But that's what I had there. And while you're with your doing your deployments and your training, I ask all the guests this: what is the one small, I guess you could say, boring thing about the military life that you find yourself missing? And also, what do you see that you did in the military or you learned in the military that you cannot break now? Like Chris Salento, our previous episode we had, he said the waking up. He said, waking up, I'm still waking up for no reason early, like I have PT pretty much.
I guess I'm going to kind of take this from two ways. I think the one thing that I can't get away from is always being on time or early. Just
Amen.
and the other thing I can't get away from is if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I find so many people in the world today, my mom always said that if a man's word's no good, the man's no good. And it fit within
Yes.
the military culture, because if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to go do it, because soldiers or airmen are depending on me, and sometimes it's a
Yes.
life-changing event. So that's the one thing. But I, and as much as I miss that, what I'm kind of grateful for is I had my poor wife put up with me we've been married for 32 years coming up. And she put up with me for most of this experience. Um, Putting up with me being deployed, putting up with me at West Point, being a wife who was sort of isolated and on her own. And that's a tough thing to do, to put up with that lifestyle. And the fact that I sometimes am so hard-headed that I'm just going to go do it. I've analyzed it. I'm
Yeah.
going to go do it. And whether it makes sense to her or not sometimes, um, but it is what it
Big
is.
shout out to our spouses.
Yeah, no kidding.
They
No
put up with
kidding.
it a lot. You know what I mean?
And then I have to mention my poor son and daughter who had to put up with me. And luckily
Uh,
my wife is a more moderating influence on everything, but I tend to be a little bit hardcore. I tend to believe that I can do anything and I'm going to try, and other folks um, have sometimes challenges adapting to that. Um, but I also have, I'm on a tangent, a compeer tangent for a minute. I have been so very blessed to be a part of the compeer community, and and
yeah.
and what got me there was was makes sense now that you've talked to me, but it wouldn't have made sense if you'd asked me in the beginning. When I got home and after COVID, I decided I'm going to get out of my freaking house and go see people. And I signed up for the VFW and I signed up for the American Legion. And of course, I'm supposed to be involved in youth development because I spent 3 years as an ROTC instructor, and I just left West Point working with some of the best and brightest young minds I've ever seen. And I went out to visit the Sea Cadets, and I ran into this very fine man named Sam Lt.Col. I'm like,
Yeah.
what an oddity. And then I went out to visit the 209th Regiment of Cadets and ran into this very fine young lady named Tracy Lt.Col. And then I went out to visit
Yeah.
the Civil Air Patrol too. And I was impressed with what Compeer was doing. And I asked Tracy to please come to my VFW post and talk about Compeer. And she came
That's
with
awesome.
a new hire. And so I said, why don't you come to visit us at my American Legion post? So she came to our post to talk. I'm going, where's the new hire at? Oh, he quit. Oh, well, what did he do for you?
Yep.
Oh, well, I could do that. And she said, well, send me a resume, Kerry. And I went, okay. So I'm like, I have a very long blown out, it's all true, but resume from the Department of the Army and Civil Service and all that. So I sent it to her, and she hired me. And
Yes.
I've been there ever
I
since.
remember that day vividly. I do remember that, and that's what I was going to start transitioning into as your current mission now, what you're doing, outside. Yes, with Compeer. I know a lot of our listeners, Kerry, have heard us on our main broadcast. Not the conversations with Sarge, but our main broadcast, because the PFC Dwyer program is now they're trying to push it out nationally. With New York State being the only model, we are trying to, at Combat News, ensure that it goes nationally the way that it is done here, and no exceptions, no ifs, ands, or buts. A lot of people in the community know, and I'm not trying to be big-headed or have a big ego, but the PFC Dwyer program, Compeer, saved my life. People that know my testimony know that my wife was looking for anything to help me. I was in a dark place, and there was a little golf program, but they were doing it at a county course, which not the best course. Paying an arm and a leg for it. There was nobody really going. I was the main person outside of the people that were working, and I seen potential, and I started pushing it. And then I seen it, was going to go away. And then I reached out to Tracy and I, said, Tracy, I don't know what else I could do. I can't see this program go. Would you think about it? And it was a long shot, it was a long shot because she had a great job. She had, things going, but I told her, I said, you would be perfect for this and And, and she would tell people the same thing. Sarge really convinced her and not, I don't want to say the word sold her on it, but I sold her the idea that I see her potential and I see her worth. And I never would have thought that she, would have taken it to this level, the respect she has, the care she has, for veterans in the community. It was definitely her calling. But Compeer and everything that you guys do, the PFC Dwyer program, I always stand by you guys, because I see that you guys are helping save lives. I know that if there was ever an issue where we have, as participants, have an issue with programming, we can always come to you guys and say, hey, it's not working. And if a majority it's not working for, you guys adjust fire. You know what I mean? There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no meetings. I love that about it. And that's what I believe a lot of us veterans that have signed off on this petition to try to keep this the same, stress the same thing. If this program goes to the VA instead of going to the community like it does, here throughout New York State, we're worried that it's not going to benefit the veterans like it benefits us here. You know what I mean? It's not the program, it's the people. You know what I mean? You can have somebody running a golf program and vets driving vets, and you can have PFC Dwyer program, Compeer, doing the same thing. PFC Dwyer and Compeer is going to get way more numbers than the other one. It's because it's the people, it's the how it's established. So we just want to ensure that since this program saved our lives, we want to make sure we work with the politicians to say, hey, listen, we have the actual proof. The proof is in the pudding right here. You know what I mean? We want to continue. And when I heard that you came on and I met you, I was like, this is excellent. It just kept growing and growing. And like I said, you deal with a lot of things that I am, I'm not, too much a part of, you know what I mean? But the same people that you and the programming that you deal with and the people that you do, I'm still with them. I don't mean the word deal, to forgive me, guys. I don't mean a deal, but the same people that you engage with on a daily basis with the programming and stuff that you do is the same people that obviously I engage with too. And we are so blessed to have you, Kerry. And I see why, even, just in the 30 minutes that we've talked already, it all is coming together. And I think people that are listening are going to understand more of why you are how you are. You know what I mean? Because sometimes people can think that people come off fake or people come off by the book. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, you're so passionate and your stuff, and you care, that sometimes it can come off to people like it's by the book, like it's, word for word, sentence by sentence. We've been here before, done that. But once people really see and hear, just the conversation that we had already, you'll see that this has been your life. Like this has been a growing snowball of knowledge and experience to get you to where you are now, to where it almost, to some people, They're like, man, it's so natural to carry. Yes, because that's his calling. This is everything you've done in life is reverted back to the same mission. The being there for somebody, the giving not a hand out but a hand up. You know what I mean? You've done that your whole life, and now doing that in the veteran community, it's perfect. And I just wanted to tell you from the bottom of my heart, how I call a spade, and I've told people plenty of times you're in the wrong job, or you know what I mean. And it was actually some people that were before you, but I am just so happy with the team that we have at the PFC Dwyer program, with all of the things that
I've
you
been
do.
very
Just
impressed.
know that you are appreciated, Karen. Keep up the good work, man.
Well, I appreciate your kindness, but I'm really grateful to the team that we have, and I'm really grateful for Rob Young. He's like my brother from another mother
Yes,
that has
absolutely. We love Rob.
and he's got great, and he's a much better golfer than I am, and he likes golfing, and he's much better at it than I am. But he is so good with people that I'm just grateful to have him there, and I'm grateful to see us grow because one of our challenges when I started Comp here was how do we connect to the community, and it took me a while to
Mm.
realize that where we need to go is where people need us as much as we do them, and that took me to
Amen.
the Richards house. That took me to the VOC. In fact, I was just at their men's group on a Wednesday night. Uh, on Wednesday night, I was just there. And these men are trying to get well, and they're trying to stay well, and they're trying to fight their way through those early battles that I've been through.
Yes.
And as Emil would say, the purpose behind that men's group is for us to share our wisdom with each other to help us as we move through life. And there's a whole lot of that
Yes.
happens. And that's kind of a blessing to be part of that as you work with folks who have 1 year of sobriety versus 30 years of sobriety, and you get a chance to sort of share some of the lessons learned along the way. And it's just kind of a wonderful thing for us to do as veterans, to continue doing that with each other and to realize how lonely the vet gets when he becomes by himself and he can't get out to the store and he can't get out to the men's group and he can't
Yeah.
get to the doctor. It's just really
Yeah.
sad. And when Tracy ramped up the Vets Driving Vets program, because it used to be me and Rob trying to do it all by our little
Yeah.
selves, when they ramped this thing
Hmm.
up, it's been a really blessing to a whole lot of folks.
No, that is. You guys are driving. How many rides do you think that you do in a day?
Well, I'm a special case. They actually hired 3 drivers. They have 3 vehicles now, and they're taking in hundreds of people. Since I'm not during the day, I don't know what the numbers. I saw it posted, but I know they really ramped it up, and they beat last year's numbers hugely the year before. I know I did a Vets Driving Vets today with a gentleman who needs to get to the hospital for some testing. I got him home and said, "Oh, by the way, we have a men's group. I know you're here. You don't get out much. Call Vets Driving Vets. Maybe, just maybe, we can pick you up and take you to join your brothers for a nice meal." So, there's a whole lot of good that's going on here because that loneliness is and isolation is killing some of our people. It absolutely is.
Yeah, and I know we're going to be working with that tent city. Tent city is going to be turning into supposedly, veteran housing and some kind of care over there in our area on Dewey. What is it, Dewey and Lyle? Um, we're going to be following that as well because we want to ensure that veterans are actually going to be able to qualify for this. And I don't know if you've come across this, dealing with the people at the Richards House and people transitioning in general. They don't meet qualifications like the civilian sector. And what I mean by that is the same amount of money if they bring in doesn't qualify them for housing like it would do somebody else. So what we're trying to ensure is that if this is going to be veteran housing, we need to make sure that somebody who is 100% service connected, unemployability status, whatever the case may be, use our chart, our pay chart. So 100% service connected with, and not making any more money should be able to live in veteran housing. You know what I mean? Whether it's they pay a certain amount, we're not saying free, but when you think of veteran housing and you think of the fight on veteran homelessness, substance abuse, I think the ultimate form of freedom is your independence. And if we're not teaching veterans and we're not helping them, like I said, not giving them a hand out all the time, but giving them a hand up, getting them into a house, teaching them how to buy a house, teaching them that it's cheaper to own a house and it's better for you than it is to, to rent. Do you think that that is something that you've so sorry, let me back because I'm all over the place. Do you find that when you're helping out veterans, do you find that the transitioning process out of, say like the Richards House or any of the shelters or whatever the case may be is hard on the veteran to get back into a house? Do you feel that it's turns into back to square one where they gotta almost earn their keep and get like an apartment and then work their way up? Because we've found, and the reason I ask is that we find a lot of veterans that say they go through a divorce, they get fall on hard times, drinking alcohol, substance abuse, and they just want to get back and get on their feet and get into a house. And it feels like once they start the process of asking for help, once they start saying, hey, I'm a homeless veteran, I'm going through divorce, hey, I need to live in a shelter, they feel like they have to go through a step-by-step process in order to get back to where they were, instead of, hey, this is where I'm at in life, this is where I was, I identify where I need to be, can I get there? Am I making sense with that? Do you find that there's a problem with the transitioning process?
That's a good question. It's interesting as I spent time in the Richards house, talking to a number of folks, because and each one has a different background, some of which have money. They're at the Richards house, they're homeless,
Yes.
they've got money. There's others out there at the Richards house that don't have anything, so they don't have that to rely on. And you find a number of the real poor ones end up with HUD-VASH, for example, and so they get their housing set up through HUD-VASH. Well, the problem is for those folks in particular, because the ones with money they're just trying to kind of save a nest egg, trying to get prepared to go, because there's a number of them like that, and then they launch into the community and we don't see them again. There's a number that are HUD-VASH, which basically means they don't have any money, and oh, by the way, they don't have any furniture. Oh, by the way, they don't have a bed. Those guys are struggling, particularly. The good side of being a veteran is we've all got through basic training, so we sort of know how to accomplish things, and that's kind of
Yes.
a blessing. But the flip side is some of these guys, and this is a danger in the sense that, okay, I can't wait to get a house. I can't get the way to get my house. I can't wait to get the house. They get their house. They get their TV set. They get their couch, and they spend the next 2 months staring at a TV set by themselves. Oh, and by the way, if they had drinking or drug problems before they got there, guess what they're doing? Bored out of their
Again.
freaking minds, drinking and drugging. So one
Yeah.
of the reasons I've sort of tried to steer, and I've been blessed that we've been allowed to do this, steer Compere towards these folks, is because they
Yes.
need us. When they're in their home by themselves, staring at the TV set, wouldn't you rather be at a men's group? Wouldn't you rather go
Yeah.
golfing or bowling? Wouldn't you rather meet your
Yes.
brothers and sisters and share some time with them? Or would you rather just sit in your house and drink and drug? Or just
Yeah.
be lonely? I mean, what kind of life is that to stare at a TV set wishing somebody would stop by and say hello to me?
Yeah. Y- That's
So
that's not good at all.
I'm okay with this process. I'm okay with the HUD-VASH process. I'm okay with the other processes, as long as what we can do is we can connect them with brothers and sisters who can help them find their way.
Yes. Absolutely. They got to be able to have, togetherness. And I know what we as Combat News, on the other side, what we're trying to do is work with the leaders, because we have a couple ideas that we've seen work in other places. We've actually seen work in our area, just on the civilian side, just because they wanted to. So we actually have a veteran in our area, and I won't say his name, but he owns property, owns rentals and stuff, and he has a couple properties that are strictly veterans. The veterans look out for each other. They take care of the property. They don't, you know what I mean? It's nice. And what I really would like to see is more of those. I see a lot of people wanting to invest in property, or they have property, apartments for sale. So I'm reaching out to them and saying, hey, if you're a business, why don't we try to fill this with veterans? Yes, you're not going to, get your maximum amount of money, but you're going to have great, great tenants. You're going to have, reliable people. You're going to have people checking on them. We can have like a little MWR common area type of thing, and nothing professional. It's just a place where we know that veterans can help transition into a better time frame, because just like you said, I've seen that veterans are like, yes, I'm out, I'm ready to go, and then when I'm checking up on them, they're like, hey, I'm not home, I'm at the bar, and I'm like, what? Well, oh no, I'm not drinking that much. Like, okay, so I do see that the same thing you're saying is that once they get that freedom, they still need that brotherhood. They still need that buddy check and somebody there. I that's another reason why I was hoping that this tent city, if all goes well, it will be a place where veterans will have a little common area, a place where veterans know that, hey, these are veterans that are here, in this area. You can knock on a door and, say hello. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think that's what we really, really need. And I think it's going to come. Because I truly believe that, yes, I think I hate the word homeless veterans. I think that's why I personally hate the word. This is why I think this way, because I believe that veterans are never homeless. They're always transitioning. That's how I feel. You know what I mean? Because the reason I say that is, and it's multifold, but you hear stories like, the amazing Gary Biker, he was living in a cave, that was his home. You hear about veterans that live in RVs, and they have, get the PO box, or whatever they do, and they don't care. That's their home. I met a veteran when I first came here, and he moved down south because he says, I'm not doing it anymore up here. But he was 100% service connected, Kerry. He had the best sleeping bag, the best tents. If it got too cold, he said, I had money to go to a hotel. But he wanted to live out. He wanted to, which people would call homeless. But he said, I'm not homeless. Are you kidding me? He was like, I just want to live this way. So I truly believe that, because I feel I hate the word, the phrase, homeless veterans. I believe veterans are always transitioning. And I believe we need to make sure that the transitioning side of the veteran's life is bigger. You know what I mean? We need to hit them while they're in uniform, on their way out. We need to be with them, during the first, year. We need to continue on with that, because we need accountability and checks and balances on each other. That's the only way we're gonna survive this, what I call civilian sector. And having people like you that can open our eyes to seeing things, like, for instance, Sam has told me before, and it takes, sometimes for us younger guys, I'm 37, I'm gonna be 38. It takes somebody like you and Sam and the older generation to really break things down to almost Barney terms, and when I am going through hard times and I say, man, I can't get through this. It's too much. Oh my God, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You know what? People like Sam tell me, they said, you've said that before. And guess what? You overcame it, right? You've said that 13 times before and you found that light. It's, if I don't have somebody, or if we don't have somebody to remind us something as silly as that, that's a difference of, not, to be frank, life and death. You know what I mean? And that's why I really am a firm believer of peer-to-peer, of the battle buddy system, of reaching out to one another. I know you reach out to me about the men's group, the reminder, stuff like that. That's what we have to do. We have to keep doing that. And I think having you in our community, other people are seeing what you do, and they're going to start trying to replicate that. And I like that. I really do like that, because I see people looking up to you, looking up to the PFC Dwyer, Rob, everybody, all of you guys that are stepping up for us veterans. I see veterans getting off the couch because of you guys and your personalities, your teamwork, your commitment to us. It's very loud, and I appreciate it, all of you and your whole team, for what you guys do, because it can't be easy. Because I know dealing with veterans, not to take it the wrong way, but I always joke around. I said, it's got to be like herding cattle. When you get to these events, come on, guys, everybody get inside. But what do you like most about the stuff that you do now with peer-to-peer, in the PFC Dwyer program. What makes your feel goods really stand up at attention as you go on, weekly, monthly throughout the year with the PFC Dwyer program?
That's interesting. I think what keeps me going with the PFC Dwyer is just the realization of my own personal loneliness. And would I rather be home watching TV or putting up with a disgruntled vet? It's easy. I'd rather spend time with my brother than time with my VCR or my DVD player or whatever. And that's kind of what works. It's kind of like I'm privileged to have worked with addiction programs, and I'm pretty adept with AA programs. But as they will tell you in an AA program, that an alcoholic is alone in a crowded room, unless, of course, he or she has a six-pack with him, and then they're really not alone, but they really are. And so it is that connection that we miss that keeps me motivated. So whether I have a good exchange with a vet or a bad exchange with a vet, I had an exchange. I had a personal connection.
Mm-hmm.
I got to spend some time today giving a vet a ride. Well, it seems simple, but he needed the ride,
I think
and
we lost
I
him.
needed the companionship.
He will be coming back
so
in.
To me, it's a win-win. There's things I don't like. I personally don't like golf. I personally don't like bowling that much.
1 second here.
But I like vets. And if you as a vet like to go bowling or golfing,
he will get it.
and you need somebody to go with
that
you,
is Mr. Kerry Dunham, Lieutenant
this guy
Colonel.
named Sarge got me to set of clubs.
He's an amazing guy.
And I took him out
amazing
to simulate golf.
Testimony, the stuff that he brings to the table
and
for
used
us.
to hit,
we are so blessed to have him in our community.
And it was a good time.
I could talk about him for days.
Enjoying themselves.
The stuff that I've learned about him.
It was nice. They're
in
not
the past
freezing
couple
their
of days
ass off
with people
on the